Winterfell was quiet, in a strange way after the long wars. The snow still covered the ground, but there were no screams, no marching armies, and no burning towers. Arya Stark stood on the high walls of Winterfell, looking out at the land she once ran away from. She never imagined herself standing here for long. She was never meant to rule. She was the girl who wanted a sword, not a crown. Sansa was inside the Great Hall, speaking with the Northern Lords. Jon was gone beyond the wall, choosing a life away from power. Bran sat as king in the south, far from the cold winds of the north. And somehow, without planning it, Arya had stayed. The north needed a ruler, and the people kept looking at her. At first, Arya laughed at the idea. "I'm not a lady," she said many times. "I don't know how to rule." But the Northern Lords were tired of soft voices and broken promises. They remembered the wars. They remembered betrayal. They remembered how Arya Stark had faced death without fear. The night Sansa spoke to her, the fire burned low. "You don't have to be like me," Sansa said gently. "You don't have to smile or play games. The North doesn't need another politician. It needs someone who understands pain." Arya didn't answer. She remembered needle in her hand. She remembered needle in her hand. She remembered names whispered in the dark. She remembered faces she could never forget. Power had always scared her more than death. The next morning, the lords gathered in the courtyard. Snow fell slowly, as if the sky itself was watching. Sansa stood beside Arya, her face calm but her eyes heavy. One by one, the lords spoke. They did not beg. They did not flatter. They simply asked, "Rule us." Arya felt every eye on her. She wanted to run. She wanted to sail west like she once dreamed. But then she looked at the people standing behind the lords. Farmers, soldiers, women holding children. These were the people she had fought for without knowing it. "I don't want your gold," Arya said. Her voice was steady, even though her heart wasn't. "I don't want songs or titles. If I rule, it won't be easy. I won't lie to you, and I won't forgive betrayal." Silence followed. Then someone knelt, then another. Soon the courtyard was full of bent knees. That was how Arya Stark became queen in the north. The days that followed were harder than any battlefield. Arya learned quickly that ruling meant listening more than speaking. She sat through long meetings, hearing about food shortages, border fights, and old family feuds. She didn't pretend to know everything. When she didn't understand, she asked. When someone lied, she noticed. Some lords tested her. They spoke to her like a child. Others smiled too much. Arya let them talk. She watched their hands, their eyes, their pauses. Lies had patterns. Fear had a smell. One lord from the eastern hills refused to send grain to a starving village. He said winter was harsh and his stores were low. Arya visited his lands herself. She saw full barns and thin people. That night she had him brought before her. "You lied," she said simply. He denied it. He begged. He blamed others. Arya didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She ordered the grain taken and given to the village. The lord lost his lands and was sent to the wall. The message spread faster than ravens. This queen was different. At night Arya still dreamed of faces. She still woke with her hand reaching for a blade. But now, when she looked out of her chamber window, she saw lights in homes that once were dark. She saw guards walking calmly, not afraid. She was still no lady. She trained with a sword in the mornings and ruled in the afternoons. The crown felt heavy on her head, but not as heavy as the lives she protected. The North was watching her, and beyond the frozen borders, others were beginning to hear her name. The first real threat to Arya's rule did not come with banners or armies. It came with whispers. Ravens arrived from the south, carrying polite words and hidden warnings. Some southern lords were unhappy. They did not like that the north stood strong and silent under a queen who did not bow, smile, or ask for approval. They remembered Arya Stark as a little girl who vanished, not as a ruler who could change the balance of power. One cold evening, a messenger was caught inside Winterfell's walls trying to bribe a guard. When dragged before Arya, the man trembled. He said little at first, but fear loosened his tongue. "There is a plan," he said. "A marriage plan," he said. "A marriage plan. Arya felt anger rise in her chest. She already knew what that meant. Power always tried to control women the same way, through rings and bets. "They want you married," the man continued, "to a southern lord, a strong one. They think you will be easier to control." Arya's lips tightened. "And if I refuse, they will send someone else to rule the north," he whispered, "one way or another." That night, Arya did not sleep. She walked the halls of Winterfell, her boots echoing against the stone. Memories followed her faces from her list. Moments where power tried to break her. She had killed kings and monsters, but ruling meant choosing when not to kill. The next morning, she called a council. The lords argued loudly. Some said marriage would bring peace. Others warned it would bring chains. Arya listened, silent, her eyes sharp. "I will not be married for peace," she finally said. "Peace built on fear and control is not peace." A few lords looked uneasy. One spoke carefully. "Then war may come." Arya leaned forward. "Then the North will remember how to fight." But the danger did not wait for armies. A week later, a group of northern nobles invited Arya to a feast outside Winterfell, saying they wished to honor her rule. Sansa warned her. "Something feels wrong." Arya smiled faintly. "It always does." She went anyway, taking only a few guards. Old habits told her danger followed comfort. The feast began well. Music played. Food was shared. But Arya noticed the exits. She noticed the way some cups were untouched. She noticed the nervous hands. When the attack came, it came fast. Blades flashed. Chairs fell. A man rushed her from behind, shouting her name like it was a curse. Arya moved without thinking. Her body remembered before her mind did. She ducked, turned, struck. The hall exploded into chaos. Her guards fought fiercely, but they were outnumbered. Arya grabbed a fallen sword and cut her way toward the doors. She saw betrayal in familiar faces. Men who once swore loyalty, now trying to sell her crown for gold. By the time the fighting ended, the floor was red. Arya stood breathing hard, blood on her hands. That was not all hers. She did not feel fear. She felt cold clarity. The surviving traitors were brought before her the next day. The North watched closely. They wanted to know what kind of queen she truly was. Arya stood tall, her face unreadable. "You tried to sell your home," she said. "You invited wolves inside your own walls." One man shouted back, angry and desperate, "You are not fit to rule. You are a killer, not a queen." Arya stepped closer. Her voice stayed calm. "I became a killer because the world needed one. I became queen because the North needs one too." She did not execute them all. Some were sent to the wall. Some lost lands and titles. Only the leaders of the plot were put to death. Quick, clean, no show. People whispered again, but this time with respect and fear. That night, Sansa sat with Arya by the fire. "They will never stop testing you," she said softly. Arya nodded. "Let them try." But alone in her chamber, Arya stared at Needle resting against the wall. She knew this was only the beginning. Enemies would come from outside, and worse ones from within. Beyond the wall, old magic stirred. In the south, crowns shifted, and in the shadows of the world, someone was watching the queen in the north, very carefully. The winter grew darker, heavier, like it was carrying secrets in its snow. Reports began coming from the far north, villages empty, hunters missing, strange marks in the ice. At first, Arya thought it was fear spreading faster than truth. Fear always made stories grow teeth. But then a ranger arrived at Winterfell with half his face frozen and his eyes wide like he had seen the end of the world. "They're not wildlings," he said, shaking, "and they're not dead either." Arya felt a chill that had nothing to do with winter. She had faced the Night King once. She knew what real darkness felt like. This felt different, quieter, smarter. She ordered scouts north immediately. The lords argued again, saying the North needed rest, not another threat. Arya cut them short. "The North survives because it doesn't ignore danger," she said. "We don't hide behind walls and hope." As days passed, troubling news followed. A small group of armed men wearing no banners had been seen near the ruins beyond the wall. They moved at night. left no fires, and disappeared before dawn. Some said they spoke in many tongues. Others said they wore masks. Faceless men. The thought struck Arya like a blade to the ribs. She had left that life behind, or so she believed, but the past did not stay buried easily. That night, Arya could not sleep. She walked alone through Winterfell, her steps silent. When she reached the Godswood, she felt it before she saw it. Someone else was there. A figure stood near the heart tree, face hidden in shadow. "You walk like a queen," the figure said, "but your soul still walks like a weapon." Arya's hand moved to Needle. "Show your face." The figure smiled and removed the mask. It was a face she did not recognize, and one she did at the same time. "We are watching you," the man said. "You have changed the game." Arya's voice was low. "I don't belong to you anymore." "No one ever truly leaves," he replied. "You wear a crown now. Crowns attract storms." Before she could strike, the man stepped back into the shadows and vanished. No sound, no trace. The next morning, Arya doubled the guards. She said nothing about the meeting, but her mind raced. If the faceless men were moving north, it meant something big was coming. They never moved without reason. At the same time, another problem rose inside the North itself. Some lords had begun calling her the Knife Queen behind closed doors. They feared her past more than they trusted her present. One powerful house refused to answer her summons, claiming sickness. Another began training soldiers without permission. Rebellion did not always shout. Sometimes it whispered. Arya decided to act before the whispers became screams. She traveled to the disloyal house herself, alone, except for a small guard. When the Lord finally met her, his smile was thin and forced. "You should not have come," he said. "You should not have come," he said. "This is dangerous." Arya looked around his hall, at the weapons on the walls, the soldiers pretending not to listen. "You confuse danger with truth," she said. He accused her of ruling through fear, of being too broken to lead, of bringing southern chaos into northern soil. Arya listened until he finished. Then she spoke. "I don't rule because I want to," she said. "I rule because I survived what killed better people than me. You think fear makes me weak. Fear taught me how to live." She exposed his secret deals with southern lords, his letters, his promises of opening the North's gates. His face went pale. She did not kill him. Instead, she stripped him of power and gave his lands to his eldest daughter, who knelt before Arya with tears in her eyes. She was careful, but even as she strengthened the North, the danger beyond the wall grew closer. Scouts vanished. Ravens never returned. The cold felt wrong. One night, Arya stood on the battlements, staring into the dark horizon. She realized something that made her chest tighten. This threat was not coming for the North alone. It was coming for her. And somewhere in the shadows, the girl who learned to kill and the queen who learned to protect were about to collide. The first body was found hanging from a tree near the last river. No banner, no message. Just a carved symbol on the chest, an old mark from the time before the Night King, older than any lord's history. When the body was brought to Winterfell, the air in the hall felt heavy, like everyone was holding their breath at the same time. Arya stared at the mark for a long moment. "This isn't a warning," she said. "It's a challenge." The lords wanted walls higher and gates closed. Arya wanted answers. She ordered a small force north, not an army. Armies made noise. She went with them herself, dressed not as a queen but as a traveler. Sansa argued, "Beg her not to go." Arya only smiled slightly. "If someone is hunting me," she said, "I won't hide and wait." The land beyond Winterfell felt different now, too quiet. Snow lay untouched, animals gone, trees standing like silent witnesses. At night, Arya felt watched, not by monsters, but by minds, thinking ones. On the third night, the campfire went out by itself. Steel rang, shadows moved. The attackers struck fast and clean, faces covered, movements trained. They didn't shout, they didn't shout, they didn't shout. They tisted. Arya fought like she always had, her body moving before thought. She disarmed one attacker and pressed a blade to his throat. "Who sent you?" she asked. The man laughed softly, the same thing that made you. Before she could stop him, he bit down on something hidden in his mouth and went still. Arya stood frozen for a second. She knew that trick. She had used it once. They returned to Winterfell with fewer men and more fear. That night, Arya finally told Sansa everything: the man in the godswood, the masks, the feeling that her past was chasing her crown. Sansa listened, pale but calm. "They want to use you," Sansa said, "or remove you." Arya nodded. "Oh, or turn me into a symbol." The next move came from the south. A royal message arrived, sealed and polite. It spoke of unity, of shared rule, of sending advisors north for stability. Between the lines was a threat: bend or be replaced. Arya burned the letter. Instead, she called the north together. Not the lords alone, but the people: farmers, smiths, soldiers, mothers. She stood before them without armor or crown. "They think the north is a prize," she said, "something to trade or control. If war comes, it will not spare your homes or your children. I will lie to you. Dark days are ahead." The crowd was silent. "But I will stand where I always have," she continued, "in front, not above you." That night, the people of the north swore loyalty not out of fear, but choice. Still, the enemy moved closer. A child disappeared near Winterfell, then another. No tracks, no screams. Panic spread like fire. Arya felt the old rage burning in her chest, sharp and dangerous. She took only needle and the hood and went into the night alone. She followed instinct, memory, the quiet lessons learned in darker places. She found a hidden path near the crypts, one never meant to be used again. Beneath Winterfell, the stone whispered of old secrets. She found them there. 3 figures, masks hanging at their sides, and between them the missing children, alive but terrified. "You should not have come alone," one of them said. Arya stepped forward. "You shouldn't have touched the innocent. The fight was fast and brutal. This was not chaos. It was skill against skill." For the first time in years, Arya felt truly tested. Blades clashed, stone cracked, blood fell. In the end, only one attacker lived. Arya pressed him against the wall. "Why?" she demanded. He looked at her with something like respect. "Because you are becoming something dangerous, a queen who knows how to kill and when not to." She froze. "They fear what you represent," he continued. "A ruler they cannot control." Before guards arrived, he whispered one last thing: "The true enemy isn't here yet." When Arya emerged from the crypts with the children, the north saw her not just as a queen but as a shield. But far away, something ancient had felt her choice, and it was waking up. The dream started after that night. Arya saw ice not as cold, but as alive. She saw shadows move in beneath frozen rivers, and voices calling her name in languages she didn't know, but somehow understood. She woke every night with sweat on her skin, a needle in her hand, her heart racing like she had just escaped death again. The ancient thing was awake now. She could feel it. Ravens brought terrible news. Entire villages beyond the wall had vanished without signs of battle. No blood, no fire, just empty homes and frozen food on tables. As if people had stood up and walked into the dark together. "This is not war," one old lord whispered. "This is harvesting." Arya felt anger rise, but she forced it down. Rage made mistakes. She needed clarity. She sent word to Jon beyond the wall. Days later, he arrived at Winterfell looking older, heavier, like the cold had settled into his bones. When Arya saw him, for a moment, she wasn't a queen or a killer. She was just his sister. "You should have stayed away," she said. Jon looked at her crown. "Seems you didn't." They spoke alone that night. Arya told him everything: the masks, the attacks, the ancient symbol. Jon listened, his face darkening. "I've seen this symbol before," he said. "In old cave drawings. It belonged to something older than the Night King. Something that doesn't want death. It wants silence." The word stayed with her. Silence. The word stayed with her. Together, they decided the truth could no longer be hidden. Arya gathered the North's leaders and told them everything. Fear spread, but so did resolve. This time they were not surprised by darkness. Scouts returned with confirmation. The enemy was building something far north. A place where cold never melted and sound never carried. A place where even screams died. Arya volunteered to go. "No," Jon said firmly. "You're the queen." She met his eyes. "That's exactly why I'm going." They traveled north with a small group fighters who knew they might not return. The farther they went, the quieter the world became. Even the wind seemed afraid. They found the place at dawn. A massive structure of ice and black stone rose from the ground like a frozen wound. No guards, no walls, just emptiness that felt wrong. Inside they saw them, people, frozen in place, eyes open, mouths silent. They fought. Frozen in place, eyes open, mouths silent. Hundreds, maybe thousands, not dead, not alive. At the center stood something tall and thin, its body shifting like smoke trapped in ice. When it spoke, the sound came directly into their minds. "Queen of Knives," it said, "you wear death like skin." Arya stepped forward, her fear locked away. "Let them go." The thing tilted its head. "You confuse mercy with weakness. Humanity brings noise, pain, chaos. I bring stillness." Jon raised his sword, but the creature laughed. Steel cannot touch silence. Arya understood then. This enemy was not meant to be killed the old way. She stepped closer, lowering her blade. "I was raised by chaos," she said, "forged by pain, and I still chose to protect. You erased choice, that's why you're afraid of me." The creature reacted angrily. Ice cracked, the structure trembled. Arya felt something tear inside her mind. Memories, flashing faces, blood, names. It tried to drown her in who she had been. But Arya held on to who she was now, a queen. She moved fast, faster than thought, using not strength, but timing. She struck not the body, but the symbol carved deep within the ice beneath it. The ancient mark shattered. Sound rushed back into the world. The frozen people fell, breathing, crying, alive. The creature screamed, not in pain but in loss, and vanished into the cold like smoke and wind. They returned as heroes, but Arya knew the truth. This was not the end. The ancient thing was wounded, not destroyed. And now it knew her name. The North celebrated their return, but Arya did not. While fires burned in the courtyards and people spoke of victory, she felt a deep unease settle in her chest. The silent enemy was gone. Yes, but not ended. She could feel it the way a warrior feels, an unseen blade behind their back. Jon stayed for a while, helping train scouts and strengthen the borders. One night, as snow fell softly, he stood with Arya on the walls of Winterfell. "You changed something out there," he said. "The old powers don't like being challenged." Arya watched the dark horizon. "Let them hate me." Jon smiled sadly. "That's never stopped you." But trouble did not wait for winter storms. A southern fleet was seen near the narrow sea, flying banners of peace but carrying soldiers. At the same time, a northern lord one thought loyal was found dead in his chambers, his face frozen in fear, no wounds on his body. Silence again. Panic returned like a sickness. Some whispered that Arya had angered the old gods. Others said the crown itself was cursed. Arya knew better. The enemy had changed tactics. Instead of attacking the land, it was attacking belief. She called a council, but this time she spoke differently. "They want us afraid of each other," she said. "They want you to doubt me, and me to doubt you. That's how silence wins." Some lords argued. One stood and said what many were thinking. "You brought this upon us by playing at being more than human." Arya did not deny it. She stepped closer. "I am human. That's why I fight." That night, she did something unexpected. She removed her crown and placed it on the table. "If the North believes another should lead, speak now," she said. No one did. The crown stayed where it was. But the attacks grew smarter. Messengers vanished. Guards reported hearing voices that sounded like loved ones calling from the dark. One soldier stabbed his own brother, claiming he thought he was the enemy. The silence was learning fear. Arya realized the truth too late. The ancient thing could not rule land, so it was trying to rule minds. She sought the old records hidden deep in Winterfell's libraries, forgotten writings, stories dismissed as madness. One line repeated again and again. Silence breaks only when name. She understood. Names had power. They always had. Arya gathered the people once more, but this time in the God's Wood. Snow fell gently around the heart tree. She stood before them without armor, without crown. "I was trained to erase names," she said. "Tonight, I give one back." She spoke the ancient enemy's true name out loud, a sound that felt wrong on the tongue, sharp and echoing. The air shook. People covered their ears. The heart tree seemed to bleed red sap. Far beyond the wall, something screamed. The attack stopped, but the cost was heavy. Arya collapsed. She lay unconscious for 3 days. During that time, the North held together on faith alone. Sansa ruled in her place, steady and calm. Jon stood guard like he always had. When Arya woke, she felt different. Lighter, older. The dreams were gone. But so was something else. She could no longer feel the shadows the way she once did. The edge that made her deadly was fading. Sansa noticed first. "Does it scare you?" she asked. Arya thought about it. "No," she said. "It feels earned." The North stabilized. The Southern fleet turned back, sensing something had changed. Peace, real peace, settled slowly. One evening, Arya walked alone beyond the walls. She planted a needle into the snow and looked at the sky. She had given up part of herself to save her people, and she would do it again. But far away, deep beneath ice and time, something ancient stirred once more, not with hunger, but with curiosity. The Queen in the North had chosen sacrifice over silence, and legends were beginning to form around her name. Peace is never loud. It moves slowly, like snow covering old bloodstains. Weeks passed without attacks, without whispers in the dark. People slept better. Children laughed again in Winterfell's yards. But Arya felt something heavy growing inside her. Not fear, not pain, but distance. She was still queen, but she no longer felt the sharp pull of danger the way she once had. When guards walked behind her, she didn't sense their footsteps before hearing them. When strangers spoke, their lies were harder to smell. The killer in her was fading. Some nights that scared her more than any enemy. One evening, a young girl was brought before Arya. She was shaking, her clothes torn from travel. "They killed my family," the girl said. "Bandits!" They laughed. No one came. Arya listened, her jaw tight. This was the kind of thing that once would have lit a fire in her blood. She would have taken needle and ended it quietly. Now she paused. She ordered soldiers to hunt the bandits, to bring justice by law. The girl thanked her, but Arya saw disappointment in her eyes. Not at the Queen, but at the world. Later that night, Arya stood alone in her chamber, staring at her reflection. She looked the same, but felt different. Power had not taken her humanity. It had taken her hunger for blood. The North still needed a ruler, but did it still need her? Before she could answer that question, another message arrived, this one from the Iron Islands. Ships were moving, not attacking, watching, waiting. The world beyond the North was testing its borders again, seeing if the Knife Queen was still sharp. The lords urged strength. "Show them you are not weak," they said. Arya shook her head. Strength isn't always a blade. She sent envoys instead. Honest words, clear borders, no threats. Some lords were angry, others confused. Sansa watched quietly. That night Sansa spoke what Arya had been avoiding. "You're changing," she said gently. "And that's not a bad thing. But the North may soon need something you no longer want to be." Arya nodded. "I know." The next day, a boy no older than 12 tried to attack Arya during a public gathering. He was caught before he reached her, sobbing, shaking, screaming, that voices told him she was a monster. The silence enemy was gone, but the damage it left behind remained. Arya knelt before the boy, ignoring the guards. "No one will hurt you," she said softly. The boy looked at her, confused. "You're not Huna," she said. "I'm just tired." "No," she said, "I'm just tired." That night, Arya made her decision. She called Jon and Sansa to the Godswood. The North needs a queen who can build, not just protect, Arya said. I was the shield. Now it needs hands. Sansa understood immediately. Jon looked at her with pain and pride mixed together. You're leaving, he said. Arya exhaled slowly. Not running, choosing. At dawn, the people gathered. Arya stood before them one last time, crown in her hands. I did not save the North alone, she said, and I will not abandon it. But I am no longer the ruler it needs. She placed the crown on Sansa's head. The crowd was silent at first, then they knelt. Arya felt something release inside her chest, like setting down a heavy pack after a long journey. That night, she packed lightly. Needle stayed with her. What will you be now? She asked. Arya smiled, small and real. Free. She rode north at first, then turned west. No banners, no songs. Just a woman walking into a world that no longer needed her blood, but might still need her truth. Far away, the ancient powers watched, not as enemies, but as witnesses. Arya traveled alone for many days. No guards, no crown, just the sound of her horse and the open road. The world felt wider without walls and duties closing in around her. For the first time in years, she wasn't listening for danger. She was listening to herself. She passed through small villages where no one knew her name. People spoke freely around her, complaining about weather, food, and distant kings. No one bowed, no one feared her. It felt strange and good. One night, while camping near a quiet river, Arya noticed footsteps she didn't hear, but felt. Old instincts stirred, faint but not gone. You're late, she said without turning. A man stepped into the firelight. No mask, no blade drawn, just calm eyes. We thought you would never leave the crown, he said. Arya studied him. I already paid my debt. The man nodded. You broke the silence. You gave the world back its voice. That changes things. For you, she asked. For everyone. He offered her something small, a simple coin, unmarked, a choice. Walk away, he said, or walk between. Arya closed her fingers around the coin, then dropped it into the fire. It melted quickly. I'm done belonging to shadows, she said. The man smiled, not angry, not disappointed, respectful. As you wish, Arya Stark. He vanished like smoke on water. Arya sat by the fire long after, staring into the flames. She realized something important then. She wasn't losing herself. She was becoming whole. Weeks later, she reached the western coast. The sea stretched endlessly before her, wild and unknown. Long ago, she wanted to sail it just to escape. Now, she stood there not to run, but to choose. She helped a fishing village rebuild after a storm, stayed longer than planned, taught children how to defend themselves, not with blades, but awareness. She listened to stories, shared none of her own. News from the north reached her slowly. Sansa ruled well, trade returned, the Iron Islands backed down, winter softened. People spoke of the former queen not with fear, but gratitude. They called her the Silent Shield. Arya smiled at that. One evening, a small boy asked her, "Were you ever someone important?" Arya thought for a long moment. "Yes," she said. "And then I chose to be myself." Years passed. Stories turned into legends. Some said Arya Stark vanished into the sea. Others said she became a ghost, appearing when darkness rose. The truth was simpler. She lived. She loved quiet mornings, honest work, long walks with no destination. Needle stayed at her side, not as a promise of death, but of memory. And sometimes, on cold nights when the wind carried strange whispers, Arya would look north and feel a faint echo, not calling her back, just reminding her of who she had been. She had been a girl who ran, a killer who survived, a queen who protected, and finally a woman who chose peace. The world kept turning. Darkness rose and fell as it always would. But somewhere beyond songs and thrones, Arya Stark walked free, no longer shaped by fear or fate. And that was the greatest victory of all.